here here today in the morning, and I'm actually walking, so it's an actual day walk today to talk about tarot cards. Now, for those of you who don't know, tarot cards are a divination device used by I think it's old, probably early 15th and 16th century. It's probably younger or older than that. I don't know when the phenomenon of tarot cards actually started, but I know for sure that they have a lot to do with divination and being able to not necessarily predict the future, but be able to sort of chart a path for someone's life. Now, one of my thoughts on tarot cards, I can appreciate them as an artistic concept. I can appreciate them for, in some cases, the security they might provide for people. But I would like to pose a different perspective on tarot cards. For one, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of tarot cards. I just have to get that out of the way. So this video is obviously going to be biased. I do know some groundwork things about it, but by and large, I have some issues with it. For one, they're extremely interpretive. And the reason why I was talking about them as an art form is that I can appreciate them as an art form. Their ability to depict figures and narratives in entire moments by a simple image is very impactful. However, these images are extremely interpretive. You can interpret these images in a variety of different ways. And that's why if you're someone who's just getting into tarot cards, just learning about it, you can look at these images and just be like, what the heck is this trying to say? Or you can look at the name of the image and you can get very concerned about it. Now, there's certain elements of the imagery that's brought together by the text underneath the imagery. For example, the Hermit card. If you just looked at the image of the Hermit card and didn't have anything to define what that Hermit card was, you wouldn't be able to tell that that guy's a hermit. You would just think that it's some guy that's hunched over with a cloak over him, And this is just probably going over the classic edition of tarot cards. There's probably a lot of different versions where it's a lot more easily discernible. But yeah. I don't necessarily like them because of how interpretive they are and how in some cases they can fuel more anxiety than they actually quell, because not everybody has access to information on tarot cards. And when they do get access to information, it really comes down to where they get the information from, who is saying the information, and what type of message is trying to be told. There's a positive meaning behind a card that could be conceived as negative. And then there are some cards that are just purely negative, but then they're surrounded by positive situations. And then people start to assume that there's just one thing in their life that's contributing to all their mishaps and issues, when a majority of the time, it's not that simple. A majority of the time, it's a amalgamation of different things. It's not just, oh, well, there's this situation involving this person, and if you have to talk to this person about this, and you have to exercise discretion. But there's a lot of cards that talk about exercising discretion, but that should be universal. In every case, you should be able to exercise discretion overall. For example, you got the Seven of Cups card, right? The Seven of Cups, I think it's the Seven of Cups, might be less than that or more, because there's a lot of cups in tarot cards, is basically a card that talks about and anybody who knows more about tarot cards can correct me in the comments below, but it's a card that basically talks about things not being as good as they seem, not just walking into situations and not being able to have any discretion and being able to think about things. But that's a universal thing, right? That's something that's applicable in a variety of different situations, and that's something that's so broadly accessible that, or not just broadly accessible, but it's a piece of advice that's like you should constantly have. It's not something that there's a particular, like, that you need to be reminded in a particular situation to have. At least if you're someone who, well, I don't know. I mean, some people might need a reminder in some instances where, you know, they're not so sure if they're having logical discretion. I mean, like, the reason, like, tarot cards are very similar to sort of like just having something there to be able to simply explain what's going on in a situation, and to be able to depict things that you may not realize in a situation, so that you can be able to chart a course for your future. But the thing is about it is that at the end of the day, that's just that's something that I feel like should be taught to be a natural part of the culture of a particular place. Like, you have to be able to have a critical mindset, and that's something that I feel like can happen just through simple conversation, just through simple advice, just through simple, just telling people what's going on. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is about it is that some people can draw a card deck or a card situation that has nothing to do with your situation. Like, there's no way to know that every card deck that someone draws 100% is emblematic of their situation, you know, because it's random. And there's like a 1 in 52 chance of you drawing that card. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that card is 100% emblematic, because you could draw a completely different card in another round and it'd be the complete opposite of what you drew in the last round, and therefore they could cancel each other out. And so it's like what is the context? Like, and a lot of the times they have, whatever you have to draw these things, if you're going to use this as a form of divination, if you're going to use this as a form of being able to chart a course for your life, you're going to have to draw multiple cards. You can't just draw one card. There's an entire narrative behind the cards being in succession, because it's like a comic book, you know. Now, for writing, I can see them as being very good tools for writing. I can see them as being very good tools for inspiration, for aesthetic. But I don't really see them as a good tool to use to be able to chart a course for your life completely. You know, I can see their usage in some ways because they have such broadly accessible like ideas in them that anybody can be able to draw like any sort of meaning from. But that's the same as like if I was an individual, right, who made a series of short films, right? And these series of short films were basically a like sort of amalgamation of all things that could possibly happen in someone's life, all situations and dynamics that could happen in someone's life. And so I combined all these different cards, and I made this long, extremely long series. There's only a select amount of episodes you can make for that show. And I make each episode like 24 minutes to an hour, or 30 minutes to an hour. And I chart the entire process of each narrative of possible situations that could happen. Now, I'm going to have outliers from these situations, because there's no way that you could be able to predict every possible dynamic and situation, because there are some factors that will be introduced into reality in the future that you have no way of being able to perceive in the current situation. Now, there's some crossover at least now, but the reason why there's some crossover now is because we have lived, humanity as it's lived since the tarot cards have been made, has lived under a certain context over the thousands of years, over the past couple thousand, tens of thousands, probably 100,000 years. And so because of that, we can use certain information to be able to chart what's possible, right? But I'm getting away from myself. Basically, if I made a show that was like tarot cards, where you had a wide variety of different narratives that dealt with a wide variety of largely accessible situations, and I put them in succession, one in front of the other, and then you randomly shuffle the episodes, and then you draw out an episode, and then we use that episode as a means of divining, of being able to tell, okay, well, this is what a possible situation could be. Now, I'm most likely probably going to do that because that sounds like a really cool idea for a show. But it's like if you use something like that as a means of being able to predict, or not necessarily predict, but be able to tell what the situation is, when really that's something that you already know. The dynamic of a situation is something that people already know, I feel. And if you don't know, then somebody else already knows. You know, if you're educated enough about the dynamics of a variety of different people, you would already know these things. These aren't something that you definitely need to go to one particular thing to understand. Another reason why is because a lot of people these days have sort of this fate-based mindset. A lot of people are very fatalistic. So when we look at something that's outside of ourselves to give us context into how we can be able to chart our lives, normally we trust it without any real discernment, and then we just sort of fall in line with it because that's what a lot of other people are doing, and it's worked for other people. And so because it's worked for other people, we're just going to fall in line with it, you know? But the problem with that is that humans have the capability to be versatile. We have the capability to change situations if we have the gusto, if we have the willingness to change said situation. For example, if I were in a situation and I drew the Tower card, anybody who's into tarot knows about the Tower card. Tower card is basically get out of that situation. That situation is dangerous, or the worst possible thing is going to happen from that situation, right? That's basically what the Tower card is, right? Now, that's probably not the only thing. Sometimes it means that you just need to get out and go somewhere and get your troops together. Now, I feel like if you have a spread of cards and a Tower card comes up, you have to implore why the card came up, what you can do about the situation, and stuff like that. But then again, you have to wonder, like, is the anxiety inspired by the card the thing that's causing the Tower situation to happen? Or is it something that's just going to happen inevitably? Because if it's something that's caused by someone looking at that card and then being anxious, then you have to wonder, the problem isn't the card. It's most likely the fact that that person is just using these cards as a means to live their life, as opposed to just thinking, well, this card could possibly just help me have some insight about myself, but it's not something that's it's not something that's just true objectively. I guess that's what the point of my video is. I've been kind of rambling, but the point is that this is a morning ramble. I'm supposed to ramble and go off topic. But, yeah, like, there's no, like, it's not objective. There's no one way to be able to It doesn't tell you everything you need to know about a situation. There's so many different interpretations of what a single card could mean, let alone an entire spread of cards. So at the end of the day, those of you who are possibly anxious about tarot cards, I wouldn't necessarily get anxious if you get a reading by someone and it says some shit that's not good, or it says some things that's not good. Like, I wouldn't necessarily get super concerned about that. Why wouldn't I get super concerned? Because at the end of the day, you never know how the future could turn out. You never know how a situation could change. You can learn something completely different than what you thought before, and that can change the entire dynamic of the tarot card spread, or whatever. If that's you know, the process on high that gives you all the that calls all the shots and has all the answers. Anyway, this video is really long. You guys have an awesome rest of the day. I'm probably going to post another video because I'm still walking. So yeah.